Hello. I hope I'm audible because unfortunately I'm recording the meeting and I cannot be like live with you guys, but I have to record it because of the time difference. Um, I would like to thank Lisa for inviting me to this lecture. My name is Majid Khan, and I am assistant professor of business ethics and corporate social responsibility at NUS Business School in Pakistan. I have my PhD from Messi universities. That is why I'm very excited to be back and presenting this to you guys. So just a bit about the overview about of what I'm going to talk about. So I'll start with analyzing the notion of corporate social responsibility. And before that, I'll talk about what corporations are and legally and in terms of their ownership structure. Let's see whether they can be responsible. Then I'll distinguish between the various concepts of corporate social responsibility. Then I'll present to you the stakeholder theory of the firm. And I'll talk about different aspects of stakeholder theory or different versions, so to speak. Then finally, I'll be talking about a very new concept. You must have heard about this, but it's called corporate citizenship. Let's begin. If I was there in person in your class, I would start by asking what is a corporation. So you know that corporation is essentially defined in terms of their legal status and ownership of the assets. So legally, corporation is a separate legal entity, right? By definition, by law, it is separate legal entity. That means it's an artificial person. It is not a real person like you and I. So, and in the eyes of law, it is just an artificial person. And then in terms of ownership, so it is notionally owned by shareholders, but it exists independent of them. That means like as a shareholder, you can, like in a globalized world, you can buy and sell share. For example, if you're sitting in Palmerston North, you can buy in Auckland or you can buy in New York City, right? So this is how the thing works. So corporations exist independent of your ownership because you then will vote for the board of directors, and board of directors will ultimately hire CEOs, and those CEOs and management, they work on behalf of you to run the corporation, right? So the corporation actually runs or exists independent of the ownership. So the ultimate responsibility of the manager is to work for the welfare or for the benefit of the shareholder, right? So in a capitalist world, you can say that the ultimate responsibility is to maximize the value of share, right? So nothing else. You see, like there's no responsibility or no social responsibility when you define a corporation. You can't see like social responsibility elements in this definition, right? So the only social responsibility a manager has is to work for the welfare of the shareholders. So, like considering the definition of this of a corporation, right? So I can ask you the question: Can a corporation be socially responsible, or can corporations have social responsibilities, right? So Melton Friedman, you must have heard the name. I would recommend you to go and watch all those debates about corporation role as socially responsible entities versus corporation should work for the self-interest, right? So that there are a lot of debates, very interesting, very thought-provoking. So I would recommend you to go and watch those debates on YouTube. But Milton Friedman, you would know that he was the proponent of capitalism, and he said, the only responsibility a corporation has is to maximize its profit, right? Nothing else, nothing more, nothing less. Just maximization of profit is the responsibility of corporation, right? So he was a staunch you can say the opponent of corporate social responsibility. But then you can say that Friedman vigorously argued against the notion of social responsibilities for corporations based on three arguments. The first one is only human beings have a moral responsibility for their actions. You and I, we make all the organization, we humans, us, we make all the organization, we make even the corporations, right? Even the university exists because of, although it's not a corporation, right? But it exists because of the students, you have faculty, you have administrative staff, and then a lot of other stuff, right? So basically, he said all the decisions within the organization or within any corporate setup are made um, by people. So therefore, people or humans should be responsible, not the organization, not that separate entity, right? So it is manager's responsibility to act solely in the interest of shareholders. So the only fiduciary responsibility a manager has is to work for profit maximization of the shareholder or increase the value of the share. And lastly, social issues are not the responsibility of a corporation. So they are the province of the state. So like your healthcare, your education, or other kind of social welfare should be provided by the state or the government, not by the corporation, right? So again, if I summarize, I would recommend you to go and read his article as well. It was published in 1970s in New York Times. So it's not a classical research paper or academic article. So it's more of a magazine article. So you go and read it. It's quite interesting. So it's the title is The Social Responsibility of Business is to Increase Profit. Or the title is just Social Responsibility of Businesses. It was published in 1970s. Moving forward. So I may, if I was there, I may ask you who align with this ideology, businesses only should have, or the only responsibility businesses should have is to work for their self-interest or work for the profit maximization, not with other things. So I hope Lisa would ask you there. Okay, so moving on. Then having said that, then first we define corporation. You would see there is no elements within this definition of corporation that corporation can be socially responsible. Then we talked about Milton Friedman. He vigorously argued against the notion of social responsibility based on three views that we just discussed. And then there are some arguments that assign some responsibility for the corporation, right? So it's a long and complex debate, but then I have cited these people. If you are interested, you can go and read for yourself. But the first argument for social responsibility is agency, right? So agency is individual call right at the end of the day, right? So for example, as Milton Friedman just said, that individuals comprised of the organization, each organization is comprised of individuals, then they make the decision on behalf of the corporation. So all individuals cannot be harming people, harming environment, harming society and other stakeholders, right? So that the individual as a person, you and I and someone else would assert their agency, right? So you cannot be always harming people and working for the welfare of the shareholder, right? You would, at the end of the day, you would think, yeah, no. I should work for, I should be doing the right thing, right? So individuals may assert their agency, right, at the end of the day. The second is legal identity. So this is perhaps the most strong argument for social responsibility. So if you get a job in any organization, right, so you have a contract for that job, that means you are protected, right, by the law. So the corporation have to pay some, whatever is presented in the contract, will have to pay that money, will have to give you that working condition, and they cannot exploit you beyond that, right? So everything is mentioned there, and then that means you are protected, right, by the law. So it's not only the shareholder, you as employee, you are protected, right? Similarly, you can see the contracts with suppliers as well. So not only the shareholder, but other stakeholders are protected by law. The third argument is organizational culture, right? So you would know any organization has specific sort of values and way of going about things, right? So which is loosely is called organizational culture, right? And that determines what is right and wrong within an organization. So organizational culture cannot always be bad because of your organizational culture. You can go for social responsibility. You can think about other stakeholders as well, right? Rather than only thinking about the interest of your shareholders. And lastly, I want to talk about functional identity. So I'll be discussing this concept of corporate citizenship right at the end of this lecture. But basically, that concept means that corporations present themselves on social media as well, and in their annual reports or sustainability reports, or if you look at their website, they present themselves as a citizen, which means just a good neighbor, right? So good neighbor is someone that is a person, right? Like you and I. So they present themselves like a person, but then legally we just define that they are not a person, they are an artificial person. But if they present themselves as a person, that means they either pretend or they have some real intentions behind it, right? They want to do the right thing. So functionally, or their functional identity also suggests that they need or they are taking care of other other uh, stakeholders, like, or there's sometimes they espouse some emotions as well, like in their slogans, like McDonald's try to say I'm loving it, and different organizations have, if you look at Apple, right? So they have different slogans, right? So they try to espouse some emotions as you and I individuals do. I hope this may made some sense. Let's move on. Then what actually is corporate social responsibility? Well, I'll start with defining, and before defining corporate social responsibility, I would want to say that this corporate social responsibility or defining CSR is not an easy exercise because of three reasons. One, it has multiple dimensions. That like so, some corporation may be saying we are treating our employees well in terms of wages, in terms of working condition, and they may be talking about their suppliers in terms of honoring the informal contracts. Maybe they must be saying we are treating the government or our relation with the government as well in order or the way they operate within the realm of law or not trying to subvert the law, right? And then there are so many stakeholders with customers, for example. So an organization may say that we are treating our customer well, we are providing them quality products, we are in terms of pricing as well, or in terms of truth in the advertising, right? So you can see there are multiple dimensions. So a corporation it's hard to define what is then socially responsible, which dimension, right? Then the second one is what passes as socially responsible behavior has shifted historically. For example, in the past, in 18th century or 19th century, you like people, or if you are cutting working hours from 14 to 10, that was considered as socially responsible. But in today's world, anything more than 8 hours would be considered irresponsible. Or if you talk about diversity, right? In terms of gender, in terms of races, it didn't used to be very common back then, but now if you are not following those diversity initiatives, and if you do not have a diverse workforce, then that may be considered as socially irresponsible. So this is the second reason that the concept of social responsibility shifted over time. And then lastly, the rhetoric of social responsibility versus substantial action. This is basically what my PhD thesis was on. So it is very convenient for organization or businesses to talk a lot about social responsibility and not do anything. So you would see they flood their annual reports, they flood their sustainability reports and their websites or TV ads with the rhetoric that they are a good or they are responsible entities, right? Um, because talking is convenient, writing is convenient, and it's convenient for businesses to talk about it rather than uh, doing the actual action. I'm not saying that all organizations have this decoupling between what they say and what they do, but there are many organizations they just talk about it, and then when you look at their actual practices or impact of their practices, you won't see any substance there. So these three dimensions make the concept of CSR hard to define. Well, for simplicity perspective, and then uh, or having a minimalistic definition of CSR, I choose this Campbell 2017 article, which was published in Academy of Management Review. So this or Campbell defined CSR as, or in terms of two perspectives. The first one is corporation must not knowingly do anything that could harm their stakeholders, right? So it shouldn't be doing anything that harm any of the stakeholders, may it be customers, employees, um, community, society at large, or the environment, right? So if you are harming the second point of the definition is you must rectify whatever harm you have incurred, right? So rectification may come because of some regulation, because of pressures from the society, or some maybe it may be because of moral situation, right? So if for something, or I have done something wrong, then it's my job to, or responsibility to fix it. Excuse me. Then why corporations have social responsibilities? I would talk about three reasons. The first one is business reasons, and it's also called as enlightened self-interest. Um, Business reasons, basically, corporations are, and there is a lot of literature to suggest or back this argument that corporations, if socially responsible corporations, will have extra or more satisfied customers, employees may be more attracted and committed, and you are foresting the regulation or legislation, and in the long, or if you are investing on corporate social responsibility, that is a sort of long-term investment that from which the corporation can benefit. So, well, actually, the whole point of business reasons is the self-interest of the corporation is very important. And if you are doing something good for your stakeholder, ultimately that will benefit the organization itself, right? Or the business itself. This is the crux of business reasons. Then moral reasons. Moral reasons is because of, is you can say, the ethical reasons, right? So corporations cause, the first one is corporation cause social problems. You see, like, there are a lot of social problems, environmental scandals incurred by corporation, right? So for example, in Rana Plaza, Bangladesh, recently, not recently, but in 2011 or 13, I think. So there were a lot of women working in there, and they were working in the supply chain of big clothing brands like Zara and all that. And then the working condition there was so bad that the whole plaza got fired, and about 1100 people died there, and there were so many people injured, right? So this is like, this is some problem that organization have caused. And if you look at issues like climate change issues and environmental disasters incurred by corporation, right? So they cause a lot of problems. That is why they need to be socially responsible. The second one is corporations should use their power responsibly. Um, See, corporations have a lot of power. I mean, if you talk about money, right? So there are so many corporations. They are richer than countries like Pakistan, Poland, and all that, right? So if you talk about Amazon, it has net worth more than twice of Pakistan, right? Or twice of the GDP of Pakistan. So these one corporation is very rich, and when you are very rich, you have a lot of power, right? And morally, it is a corporation's job to be responsible. So third one is all corporate activities have some social impact. So whatever corporations do, if they are building a plant, for example, in a specific region, that will have some social impact, right? If they are taking that plant from there, obviously that will have some impact. Firing people, whatever corporation is doing, it will have some social impact on the society or on people, or even on the environment. So corporations, lastly, corporations rely on the contribution of a wide set of stakeholders in society, not just shareholder, right? So it's like saying that shareholder is someone who just buy and sell the shareholder, but and some of those interests of the shareholders are not that long term. Employee may stay there for decades, but most of the shareholders they just buy and sell shareholders, not for the sake of owning it, but for speculative reasons, right? If someone is studying finance, you would know it. So, and the corporation, if corporation is successful, it's not only because of the contribution or because of the money that shareholders chipped in, but it's because of the contribution of maybe employees, management, customers, and all the stakeholders, right? So this is another moral reason that corporation need to be socially responsible. And then we move on to institutional reasons. So this is something which is discussed by institutional theory. So if you are interested, you may go and have a look at institutional theory. Basically, it talks about three pressures. The first one is coercive pressure. So coercive pressure come from the government in the form of regulation or state regulation, right? And it can be some regulation from the industry or from within the organization. You would know that business organizations have codes of ethics, right? So industry regulation or organizational self regulations. So they would know that there is or these self regulation also tells you that what is the right thing to do within an organization. Normative is basically it comes from norms, values, even the education, maybe a BBA degree or a master's in management. You learn about ethics or some other degrees, right? But there was a study saying that business students are the most unethical students, and that has to do with the curriculum that is being taught. Because if you look at finance, it will talk about uh, how can you make more money or attract more money. If you look at HR, human resources, they will teach you how can you squeeze the employees and get the maximum out of them. So similarly, all the disciplines of business schools, that teach us some efficiency or productivity narratives, right? But that is why the research suggested that way. But normative pressures again comes from values, norms, culture of a nation or a specific region, or it may be, for example, Maori's culture in New Zealand, right? So they have their specific and knowledge tradition, and they have specific um, way of doing things which determine what is right and wrong, right? So which is different from the Western concept. So these so if a Maori, I know I've been working on some Maori business projects as well. So I know they have their own way of doing. So Maori business would be ethical because of their cultural and whatever norms they have, right? So this is basically what normative mean. And then mimetic is basically, so if one company is doing it, then other companies will start copying it, right? So it's because of emulation and mimetic reasons. So one business is doing it, why not others? So again, I define corporate social responsibility. Then I said there are three different reasons. One is business reasons, moral reasons, and lastly, institutional reasons. I'll take a pause for drinking water. Okay, so you must be aware of this corporate social responsibility pyramid. Um, it was given by Archie Carroll. It says that social responsibility or CSR includes four things. One is, or four levels. The first level is economic, then legal, then ethical, and then philanthropic is the last one. So this is how it goes. So at the very basic level, you need to have some economic responsibilities, right? So economic responsibility is you need to have some money, not only to give back to your shareholder in the form of dividend, but you need to have money to give fair wages and provide good working condition to your workers, to provide quality product at the right price to your customers, right? So economic responsibility is very, very important. Not to suggest that money is not important, right? And then you need to have this legal responsibility that you're not, if you don't comply with law, obviously there is punishment against that, but at the second level you need to work within the realm of law that of any state, right? So these two are required by the society. And then ethical responsibility is like how you are treating all the stakeholders, and we'll discuss what are those stakeholders in a minute. And lastly, philanthropic responsibility is basically you giving some donations and philanthropy. So these ethical responsibility is expected, and the last one, philanthropic responsibilities are desired by any society. So basically, Archie Carroll talked about four levels: the first, economic, legal, ethical, and philanthropic responsibilities. So if you look at this pyramid, and you would see that there is a lot of difference, like, right, in terms of like if you see globalization or deterritorialization and how it affected overall business setup. So there are some regional differences that exist with respect to CSR at all the levels that we discussed, right? For example, if you look at USA, traditionally is a capitalist society, and their economic responsibility would be to look at the benefit of the shareholders, right? Whereas if you look at European countries, they talk about the welfare of their employees, and they have this even supervisory board, right, where members of their employees or employees union, labor union, they sit there and talk for the, or look for the interest of the employees in Pakistan and India. I think they have this tradition of investment in the local community. So you see this economic responsibility differ across the globe. In China, it would be quite different. I think Lisa would be in a better place to discuss that. But legal responsibility. So if you look at the state, the role of the state is seen with or people trust the government in Europe, especially in the Nordic countries, right? So that's why they have a lot of taxes, and then all those taxes goes to the welfare of the people who are living at the bottom, right? But in other countries like in Pakistan or in other developing countries, because of corruption, they people do not trust their governments. And then ethical responsibility, wide range of differences. For example, child labor, although everyone thinks it's bad, but and everyone should believe that this is bad, but you won't see children working in factories in the West, but you would see children working in countries like Pakistan, and the reason for that is the state is not playing its role, or the state is too poor to play its role, right? And then if they don't work in the factories, what else would they do? And this is what happened in a recent case in a soccer making factory in Pakistan. So they were working in the supply chain of Adidas and Nike, and then people realized that they come the suppliers, they're using this child labor, and then the big companies like Nike and Adidas, they send in their some NGOs to work as watchdog and NGOs. They said, oh, no more child labor in Pakistan. So what happened is children had nothing to eat after that. Even they were the only bread earner for their family, right? So they become like, some were involved in robberies and all sort of different issues, right? So these are different. Ethical responsibility differ from country to country, maybe cultural context to cultural context. And similarly, if you look at gift giving, right? So if you, within the organizational context, if you are giving gift in the UK, people would see it as a bribe. In Japan, if you are denying a gift, right? So people would be offended. So these are different cultural, in terms of ethics, different cultural differences that you need to have in mind. So lastly, philanthropic responsibility in Europe, people give it through a framework, maybe through the government. But in Pakistan, people just have this tradition of giving to donations to poor, right? And maybe China is the same. Companies are expected to share their wealth, right? So these are some international differences. If you talk about Archie Carroll's CSR pyramid. Now I want to talk about stakeholders and the stakeholder theory. So as you would know, stakeholder is some person who is affected or can affect the decision making, or you can say any group or individual who can affect or is affected by the achievement of organization's objective, right? So anyone, so it's not only the shareholders, right? So anyone, employees, customers, all the people, they can affect or can be affected, are affected by the decision makings of the organization or organizational pursuit of their objectives. So basically, this stake of the stakeholder is defined in terms of rights and effects. So corporation has the obligation not to violate the rights of others, right? So for example, your right to participate within the society, your right to vote, for example, right? Or your freedom of speech, right? So corporation should not be violating that right. This is the first thing. And then the principle of effect. So basically, corporations or companies are responsible for the effect of their actions on other, right? So whatever you do, you must be responsible, right? As a corporation. So this is how this stake is defined, and this is the traditional model of stakeholder theory. So if you look at it traditionally, you only had these four stakeholders. The first one was shareholder, employees, customers, suppliers, right? But here you can see you only had this two-way relationship with shareholder, but like shareholder chip in their money and then they get money back, right? With other stakeholder, the corporation has only one-way relationship, right? For example, employees given the skills, customer take the products, and suppliers give their uh, maybe raw material. So, and this is an extended version of that. So corporations now have those four stakeholders, but now they have two-way relationship with not only those four stakeholders, but with other like government, with competitors, and civil society as well. But this is the extended model of, or the network model of shareholder theory. So you can see this is firm, then this is stakeholder one, and then the stakeholder of the stakeholder one. So, for example, you working within, for example, at Messi University, so you are direct stakeholder of the Messi, right? But then your parents, for example, if they are chipping in money, they're giving you money to study. So they are obviously they are not direct stakeholder of Messi, but they are your stakeholder. So Messi should be taken care of, not only you but your parents as well. So basically, this network model says that the stakeholders of the stakeholder are your stakeholder, right? I hope this makes sense to you. And then why stakeholders matter? So businesses should, we just discussed that Melton Federal and define corporations that corporations or businesses should be run in the interest of of their owners or shareholders and freemen. This theory actually this stakeholder theory is proposed by or was proposed by Milton Friedman. So it's Friedman versus Freeman, right? So it says that no, there are other legitimate stakeholders, right, or people with a legitimate stake with the corporation. So there are two perspectives. One is legal, right? So stake in the corporation is already protected legally in some ways, right? So legally binding contracts, as we just discussed, for example, employees, you have your interests to some extent are protected by the law, right? And the other is the second perspective is economic perspective. So why corporation or why stakeholder matter? First one, as I just discussed, legal. Your stake is as a stakeholder, for example, as employees, and then as there are some consumer courts as well, right? So you can, if a product is harmful to the health of the customers, then the customer can take the corporation to the lawsuit, right? So this is legal perspective. Then the other one is economic perspective. So basically from institutional economics, these insights, the first one talks about externalities. So whatever corporations do, they have some externalities. For example, if a corporation is already having its plant in Palmerston North, so now they are taking their business away from Palmerston North to, for example, China, right? So do you think people only this decision will only affect the workers or the employees of the company? No. How about the local small businesses, right? How about the tax that the company was paying to the local government, and then on that tax money, the hospitals were run, then the schools were run, right? So a lot of people that are affected by that decision, right? So it has some externalities, social externalities. Oftentimes it has environmental externalities as well. So economic reason why corporations should take care of their stakeholders, or why stakeholders should matter. And the last one is agency problem. I think I already discussed this. It talks about the short-term interest of owners versus long-term interest of the managers or the employees or customers, right? So basically, it says that a shareholder buy a share for the short run, and mostly not for the sake of owning the company, but because of speculative reasons, so that they can make some money out of it and then sell it whenever is best for them, right? So, and then employees, when you are hired within a corporation, right? So your interests are long term. Mostly employees are likely to stay for long term within that organization, right? So this is another perspective that you need to keep in mind. Then you have this, like, so I hope I'm making sense. Why stakeholder matter? The first one is legal perspective. Second one, economic reason, externalities like taking a plant from some location. Then agency problem is like when you are working within an organization, you have this long-term interest versus this short-term interest of the shareholder, right? So that is why these are the reasons why stakeholders should matter, not only the shareholders. So keeping this in mind, then this gives a new role to corporations, right? So rather than simply being the agent of the shareholder or trying to maximize their wealth, management has to take into account the rights and interest of all the legitimate stakeholders, right? So you have a new role to look for the interest of all the stakeholders. So if you look at this, the terminology of stakeholder in international context, the term may seem very new, but this thinking was already there in Chinese, maybe culture, in Japanese culture, right? So for example, and there are organizations, they are run differently. For example, you have these cooperatives, right? So cooperatives are different from the traditional corporations, right? So traditional corporations are owned by, as we just discussed, owned by the shareholder and run by the management. So, and then those shareholder maybe exist independent of the corporation, right? So, but cooperatives are collectively owned by maybe by the employees, by suppliers, by banks, and so many people, right? So, like you have Fonterra, which was an example of in New Zealand, right? Which was an example of cooperative, and then you have for example, in Germany, you have this supervisory board, right? So you on the supervisory board, you have members of labor unions to protect the interest of employees. So this thinking was already there traditionally, but this term is pretty new, the term of the stakeholders. So different forms of stakeholder theory. The first one is, this is pretty straightforward. The first one is normative stakeholder theory, which attempts to provide a reason why corporations should take into account stakeholder interest. So, I mean, why should we take care about the, or should we take care about the normative is like it's about what should a corporation do, right? So should they take care about the interest of the stakeholder or not, right? And descriptive provides if they or whether the corporations take into account the interest of stakeholders, right? So it's basically the description of it. And then instrumental stakeholder theory talks about whether it is beneficial for the corporations to take into account the interest of corporation, right? So these are just the business reasons we discussed for corporate social responsibility, right? Why businesses are socially responsible, or businesses are socially responsible because they can attract more customers, more employees, right? And all that. Lastly, I want to talk about this concept of corporate citizenship. It is a relatively new concept. I hope you heard about this, but normally it is defined in relation to corporate social responsibility. So you have three different perspective of corporate citizenship, right? So one is a limited view. Limited view only associate corporate citizenship with philanthropy, right? Giving donations and all that. An equivalent view is the second view, which talks about or equates corporate citizenship with CSR. And lastly, you have this extended view of corporate citizenship, which says that corporations are having this political role within the society. So you already know about the limited view of CSR, right? So you're talking about philanthropy and donations. Equivalent view is you already know that corporations are considered as the same as CSR, and the extended view is corporations are playing a political role within the society, and we will just discover what is it. So this is what you can see. Like you can look at the focus, main stakeholder motivation, and moral grounding of these three views. So focus of limited view is philanthropy, equivalent view is all the stakeholders, and extended view is like social, civil, and political rights. Main stakeholders, like you give donations to in a limited view to this local community and employees. Then you have this in equivalent view, you have this broad range of stakeholders, right? Just we discussed. And then for the extended view, main stakeholders are broad range of citizens or society in general. Then the motivation is primarily philanthropic. In limited view, in equivalent view is mixed, right? So all mixed of the four dimensions we talked about, right? So economic, legal, ethical, and philanthropic. But the motivation in extended view is political in nature. Moral grounding in limited view may be reciprocity or giving something back to the society because you're taking a lot from the society, right? So moral grounding for equivalent view may be duty to be responsible and avoid harms to society. But here the moral grounding is not moral, right? Or grounding is not moral in the extended view, but it comes from a range of political arenas, right? And we discuss this the extended view. So you already know about the limited view and the equivalent view. Equivalent view is the same as CSR, and we discussed the CSR just now. But social role of the corporation in governing citizenship is basically the extended view of corporate citizenship. So the social rights, there are three rights, right? Social rights. Corporations is provider and ignorer of social rights. So corporations basically, what are, if someone asks you what are those social rights? So social rights are basically your right to participate within the society, right? So for example, education and healthcare, right? So everyone's right. So corporations sometimes provide it, sometimes ignore this right. And they have the ability, as we discussed, the corporations are so powerful and influential, right? They can do it. Civil rights is basically an or a citizen's right to be free from maybe third parties intervention. For example, your right to buy property or your freedom of speech, right? So these are civil rights that a person have, and corporations can act as enabler or disabler of these civil rights. Lastly, political rights. And this is basically a person's right to vote or to participate in the process of the governance, right? So anyone can become a minister or member of the parliament or prime minister, for example, right? So corporations actually they channel political rights, or sometimes they block these rights, right? So please, this is it from my side. We actually discuss. This is the summary: business ethics and we started with corporations. We tried to define corporation, and we discussed whether a corporation can have social responsibility. Then we talked about CSR, and then we talked about why corporations do CSR. Three reasons. Then we discussed what is a stakeholder, and we discussed different versions of stakeholder theory. And lastly, we talked about the latest concept, which is corporate citizenship. This is it from me. Please let me know what do you think of it, or if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to get in touch via email, and Lisa will give you my email. Thank you so much, and thank you so much, Lisa, again, um, for providing me with this opportunity. Ideally, I should be live so that I can interact and engage more with the students, but unfortunately, we cannot do that because of the time difference. But I hope this made sense to you guys. And if you have any questions, please get in touch. Thank you so much, and this is it from me. Bye. Take care.